Hey, friends, welcome back to the show. Today I have a special guest, my man, Nathan Max Osorio. He's an author, he's a coach and speaker who helps people master the very thing that shapes every part of our life. It's called language. After 15 years as an attorney, Nathan turned his focus towards understanding how the words we use create the experiences we live. His book, You Begin with Language, Master the Foundation of the Human Experience, breaks communication down into three clear steps that help readers develop a conscious and powerful relationship with language itself. Today, we're diving into how Nathan's ideas evolved into a movement, what his book reveals about human communication, and how authors, entrepreneurs, and creators can use these tools to express themselves with clarity, confidence, and purpose. Most of y'all know me. I love taking messaging, clarity, all those kinds of things, especially from a digital space, and helping people get very clear about who they are, what they're for, and how they can attract the right opportunities. So that's marketing. And I always tell people like marketing is clear communication. So when I found Nathan, I was like, oh my God, this is kind of perfect for the type of conversations I love having on the show. So, Nathan, welcome to the show, my friend. It's good to have you here.
No, thank you so much for having me, man.
Yeah, man, this is really cool. So, when I found your work, I was like, this is literally the real world example of how I wish a lot of people can approach their marketing, specifically in my world, right? But
Mm.
really, just in general, how they can teach, communicate, talk with people, relationships. I mean, language is everything. So, I'm excited to have you today. I want you to tell us a little bit about how you went from law to language, two worlds that obviously evolve or revolve around words, but use them very different to create very different outcomes. So, what inspired the shift going from attorney to the world that you're in today?
It really started with my own personal development journey. That started a few years ago, maybe two or three, where I felt stuck, um, frozen in my law office, how it turned out, in my circumstances, just how life was. And a friend of mine had encouraged me to pursue personal development, so I signed up with the program, and that really started me on my own journey of self-discovery, right?
Mm,
And then that did wonders for me, changed my relationship with my office, with my family, with everyone. And then I just started reading and learning just about different topics in life, science, history, just, because I like to do audiobooks primarily. And then I read some books, book on, well, one is The Language Instinct, which I talk about in my book, which is about the the science of language, how our brains are mapped for it. And then I wrote,
mm,
Sapiens, which is about a short human history of our species. And
right.
reading those two, something really clicked in me. It's like something about language is really here. Like it's so
Mm,
fundamental. It's underneath everything, but we don't really appreciate it. So I
mm,
decided to design a coaching program, you know. But in designing it, I realized I had more questions. So I did more
mm,
research and then I started writing more and then I had more
mm.
questions. So my book kind of naturally came out of the desire to explore language and teach it, but I was still learning it myself. And then
Right.
that's how my book came out. So I never intended to write a book. It just kept writing and kept evolving. It's like, oh, okay, this is a book. One day I wrote so much, I'm like, okay, this is a book. This isn't a coaching program yet. So,
Yeah, that's really cool. And in writing, that's how we kind of get to to the clear thinking, right? Because you absorb so much of that knowledge. You're like, well, how do I decipher this? How do I apply it? How do I think that's really cool. And I personally, I think reading and writing go hand in hand because it's just like the way you digest and how
oh yeah.
another form of language, right? So in your book, you begin with language. You describe communication as a phenomena people can actually master. Can you explain that in simple terms for us?
Yeah, perfect. So we use language every day, but we don't even think about it. So for us, it's a tool. It's a means of delivery. That's just what we do as humans.
Mm,
But it's actually not just that. See, when we treat language that way, we're stuck in it.
right.
But the phenomenon, we can actually connect with it and live through it intentionally. So it's really about understanding that we are not our language, And one of the things I teach is this simple phrase. which is nothing we think or say is true just because we think or say it. And there's a lot there because
Mm,
language is automatic, right? We don't actually think of everything we don't intentionally think of thoughts or of words that come to
right.
mind, judgments that pop up. And once we see that it's automatic, it's literally part of our genes, it's part of our brains. It's a mechanism, just like breathing.
Mm,
Breathing, we don't think about every breath we take, but it's part of everything we do. Language is the same. So the phenomenon is separating that, creating that space between, oh, not everything that's there is me, right? I've evolved, I've developed, my brain works in certain ways, which is fine, but it gets us so far,
mm,
right? When you master it, you can actually take it to a whole other level, right? And personal
right.
development is all about that. It's just, I feel like I've touched on the core of it, right? Everything is language. So every other system, every personal development methodology, everything, it's built on language. We just don't really interact with it that way or see it that way, I think until now.
Mm. That's really powerful. And I think you're right in that, like, you're breathing, you're sort of blinking, things you don't necessarily like that need to be done, right? But like you're not doing them per se unless you are like in unless you become aware of them and like become intentional about the box breathing and meditating, right? And when we become
Yeah.
really intentional, something else happens, like your focus really comes to the present. And I really appreciate that about your work, and that thinking of language as also this thing where you can become very intentional about and your thoughts and creating that gap. That's really powerful. I love that you went there because that really helps shape sort of a new narrative, a new perspective in our way of communicating with ourselves. Even I feel like language is kind of happening in your brain, man. I mean, like I feel like I grew up Middle East. I'm a Middle Eastern kid. I come from Iraq, so I spoke a
Mhm.
different language at home, and then I
Yeah.
was speaking English, and then even furthermore, I would speak like Ebonics with some of my homies at school, right? So there's like
Yeah.
these, and then there's of course body language. My God, so it's
Yeah.
so layered. What was your sort of experience in learning about those who grow up with sort of different languages, and the sort of the processing that starts to happen? Because there's a lot of, I feel like there's a lot of cultural roots to how we communicate too. At least
Yes.
that's, I mean, I haven't studied language obviously like you have, but I feel like that weaves itself in understanding and like emotional response or reacting. Like my wife is always so good at pointing out, like, I think you're reacting. Let's like maybe we should think about this a little bit more, right? And I'm like, you're so right.
I
How does that
love
come
that.
up in your research and work?
Well, I think so my book Begin with Language is really it's the intro point to my work. Okay.
Sure.
So but in the larger context, since I wrote my book, since I published it, I've developed a framework which I call it the compass of language.
Mm,
And all human experience can come up on this compass. You can find your place on it. So
mm,
when we talk about like cultural norms and societal norms and family dynamics and stuff like that, a lot of that is on the first step on the compass, which is I call the automatic, right?
mm.
Now, it's the context, right? It's what's already there. It's what you've grown up into. I'm Latino. My mother is Mexican. My father was Peruvian. My
Oh, wow.
ex-wife is Mexican. Her mother's Mexican. So there's definitely a family dynamic there, which I'm the patriarch, right? That's just
Right,
how it
right.
turned out. Especially when my father died, I was a patriarch, and there's a dynamic there that's just how it plays out, and there's nothing wrong with those dynamics, right? Language isn't about judgment, it's about awareness. So there's a space to be like, okay, this is the dynamic in this context. That's what's developed, that's what's automatically there. The next question is this what I want?
Mm,
Right? Is this the dynamic I want to have? Is this the space I want to occupy? That's the real interesting about language. And of course, when there's conflicts, what like I'm raised in the United States, born in the United States. Some of my ideas of even being a father are not what my father was, right?
Sure.
But it's really about where I stand in that context. Like my father
Mm,
passed before I had kids, but my mother didn't agree
mm,
with my style of fatherhood,
mm.
which was being present for my kids. My dad was a workaholic. I was a workaholic
Sure.
before I'm still a workaholic, but I go home every
Sure.
night, have dinner with my
Right.
kids, and then I come back to work, and
Right.
I'm
Right.
divorced, but I see my kids every day. My mom
Yeah.
didn't like that. So we clashed, right?
Wow.
We clashed for a
Interesting.
while. But
Yeah.
the for me, that context wasn't about how it should be, right? What my father did, what culturally is expected of me. The context is what father what fatherhood meant to me,
Mm,
what type of father I wanted to be.
right.
So going back to your question, it's about what you want to create, right? What experience you want to
Yeah.
have. And
Yeah.
at that time, I didn't have this technology. I didn't have this work. And my mother and I, we didn't communicate about my family for a few months. It was
Mm,
difficult. It's not to say it was easy, but I knew what I wanted. I knew what
mm,
type of person I wanted to show up for my kids. And, eventually she let go of her ideas because she
mm.
saw that I was showing up for my kids in a way that I wanted to show up for my kids, and my kids were better for it,
Right.
right? I wasn't trying to not be my father. I was trying to be the man, the father I wanted to be. And
Mm,
that butted up against the cultural norms for her and for our family dynamic, what she knew, right? So,
sure.
yeah, hope that
Yeah, it's
answers your
really
question.
powerful. Yeah, yeah, no, that's really powerful. And I'm glad you went there because, I feel like language is, clearly it's so layered, right? It has not only family dynamics, but how you grew up, and it's intertwined with our heritage, it's intertwined with our whether we're intertwined into faith or not. There's so many. Like,
Yeah.
I know in the Arabic language, it's heavily intertwined with like Islamic language, if you will, right? And so
Mhm.
even things you say, like we say inshallah, like all the time, which is like God willing, right? And that's like really across the Arabic language, whether you believe in God or not. Like I feel like I've heard people
Yeah.
say that, you know, but even that word, in my book, like I have like basically it shows up in my book quite a bit in me just trying to understand what does that actually mean, right? And just kind of unraveling that word for myself. So I really love that, language becomes this thing that we become intentional about, and like how we position our thinking around it. So obviously, you've done quite a bit of deep work in the sort of practical application in this, and I've seen some of your videos, which are great. So many, and I have sort of a question in like how I can sort of practically maybe use some of this advice that you have with the work that I get to do. Like, I work with a lot of authors, and a lot of them struggle to sort of what I call like own their work, or do like, I hate the word self promotion, but you're kind of trying to get yourself out there.
Yeah.
But they struggle with this, like they feel like it's like bragging. So, for me, that's a communication thing, and you have to like learn how to communicate. But from your perspective, how can understanding language help them reframe that fear and communicate their message more confidently? What's like something we can take away from you and go apply maybe today or tomorrow or this week?
That's a great question. One of the first things, so anything that pops up for you, for any of us in our minds when we want to share, when we want to talk, whatever, that's the automatic, right? It doesn't matter. We were talking right now about family dynamics or cultural expectations, but even in sharing our own work, it's the
Mhm.
automatic, you know?
Yeah.
And one of the important tools, but one of the most powerful things is to just name it. Okay. Oh,
Mm,
that's automatically there for me. Right. It's not really me. It doesn't mean anything about me either. It's just what's there.
mm,
And you can acknowledge that. And so one of the things I teach is first, name the place you're on the compass, name where you're on the compass. And largely it's the automatic, right?
mm,
And then the second question is, what's my experience of it? What's my
mm,
experience in this space? And, if you're really honest with yourself, let's say if you're hesitant to talk about your book or talk about your work, it's fear. right? You're afraid of sharing it because it might not land. Maybe you're afraid because you don't know how to say it correctly. You think there's a right or wrong way. Um, it's usually not about the work itself. It's about what you're putting in the way of sharing your work, right?
Mm,
So then the third question is, what's the experience you want,
mm,
right? And, for me, I love having conversations about my book, about this work, this access to humanity. That's what I feel like this is. It's a
mm,
very practical access to being human. And practical is important to me because I'm an attorney for 15 years. So, and this isn't for me just, and this is a little bit tangent, but this isn't for me just some other mindset trick or personal
right.
development work. This is very practical, and I want other people to feel that, share that, experience that, use it so other people can feel it too. One of the things I talk
Mm,
about in my book is how my work has changed my family, and I didn't try to change them, just who I
mm,
showed up for them with them. They showed up to me differently. So when
mm,
you connect with the experience you want, then the automatic stands apart from it. You can go back, okay, well, that automatic, that doesn't feed the experience I want. It doesn't contribute to the experience I want. And you just let it go because the automatic doesn't have any meaning. Back to what I said earlier, nothing we say or think is true just because we say or think it.
mm,
It's just language,
right.
right? And if you can apply those three steps and just be like, okay, well, I'm gonna be through this work in a way, right? One of the things my blog and what I teach is to live through language, not in it. So
Mm,
if you want to promote your work, if you want to share it, if you want to have people experience it, then live through it.
mm. Yeah, I love that. I call it the embodiment of your message,
Yeah.
of your work, or whatever. You're kind of sharing from the moment, sharing from the story. Like I have a client like, oh, I'm going to London to do this conference thing, and I'm going to meet, I'm going to be doing this conference thing. I'm like, that's fantastic. That's a great place to do your content, to make your video, to whatever, share the emotions you're having, the whatever. And they're like, really? Do you think that's, they kind of downplay it, right? And it's like, well, yeah, because it's also energy too. Like if you feel excited and enthusiastic about where you are, and maybe you just learned something or something just reinforced what you teach, right? It's a good moment to capture that in some way, shape, or form and share it. Because when you're enthusiastic, I don't know what it is, and maybe you can help me here, but there's something in this universe that connects us all. And when we're enthusiastic, somehow, some way, we kind of feel that enthusiasm, right? And
Yeah.
there's an energy behind it, as opposed to kind of a stale post or a stale thing, and you're kind of trying to force it. And so I
Yeah.
always just tell people, like, embody it, like share what you're doing, share how you're doing it. People are just as much as they're interested in your work, your message, and all that. They're also interested in you as a human and how you perceive the world. Maybe they can shape shift their perception based on what you share. So I appreciate how you sort of have this context around, you know, not everything you say and think is real, but also at the same time, if you become intentional, there's a balance to it. So I think that's really powerful, man. Can you
Yeah.
share
No,
with me, when you became an attorney, you were probably practicing a lot of this stuff without really maybe, having a methodology around it and everything kind of like you do now. But maybe whether it was your attorney work and or maybe your current work, what's something that you do that you apply um, that helps you, overcome maybe how someone maybe has a confrontation or there's tension between in a conversation, perhaps. Like, I'll be honest, like I try to be really raw with my clients, and say, I'm going to push back on that design decision because aesthetically it doesn't match your website or whatever, right? And I can see sometimes, not all the time, I can see a little bit of a tension moment there. And that's, to me, I've learned to like have thick skin around that, because I also want to defend my work, and I also want to produce something awesome for them. But I also know that they don't carry like design skills. It's kind of like a deep desire, like, oh, I want this thing here. And it's like, doesn't really go there. How does someone have, I guess, how can we control that narrative a little bit more, right? How do we, in that conversation, in that language moment, I try to always step back and say, and call it what it is. I'm like, hey, there's a little bit of tension. Why don't we just put this table it for now? We can come back and visit it when we're not like in an intense moment, right? But I don't know. Maybe there's a better way to deal with that, or at least communicate myself better, or get them to communicate their thoughts better. How do I approach that? Like from you being an attorney, I'm sure you're in a lot of heated rooms, a lot of tension. I would assume. What's your way of sort of, I guess, navigating that? I'm just curious. Again, I'm kind of asking for myself here, right?
Yeah.
Hopefully, it'll help others. Yeah.
Well, it's definitely can be challenging, right? Because the level of what my work is now. Yeah, I might have applied it or learned it, just some kind of skills of, in the past, but my work has advanced quite a lot, even in the past year, right? So I definitely
Hmm.
get the experience of, all right, this is tension. This is tension. We're not
Yeah.
getting anywhere with opposing counsel. It's like this isn't great.
Yeah.
Um, uh, so I can't necessarily speak to it. Oh, I practice law in this way. What I've
Sure.
really gotten from my law practice, which I really applied to this work, was how I deal with clients, right? How I explain
Mm.
things to them. Um,
Yes.
but going to your question more specifically, what I've discovered is that my key methodology is the pathway of language, right? The pathway starts with our own pathway.
Mm.
Okay, so we're always on our own pathway, and when you're working with someone else, they're on their pathway. And when you merge to create, for a specific relationship, like with your client for a design issue or something like that, you're trying to be on the same pathway, but you kind of have your own roles on it, right? So in that sense, it's about, you say you disagree with their design choice, and like you said, you're coming from a place where you want to create quality work, what works, what doesn't work, right? And that's if the first step on the pathway of the compass of language and the pathway of language is automatic, the second one is knowing, right? So
Mm.
you know what works, you know how it should be done, you know all that. And your client knows what they want, right? So your two knowings are butting up against each other.
Mm.
And when you get frustrated, your experience is that you're frustrated because they're I wouldn't say comes to mind is ignorant, but yeah, like they're stubborn, they're ignorant,
Right.
they don't
Just push
understand
back.
this. Yeah, so you push
Yeah.
back. And there's nothing wrong with that experience, but what is the experience you want to have with your client? What
Mm.
is the experience you want to have working with that person?
Mm.
And one of the things, now I don't know anything about design, anything like that, but
Sure. Sure. No, I understand.
whatever effort it could be to like show them the comparison, like, okay, well, this is how it looked versus this, and this is what I'm suggesting,
Mm.
recommending. Do you see the difference? Right. And
I
sometimes
see.
people need to be walked through that way. And going back to
Right.
how I speak with my clients, with my consultations and clients, that's something I've practiced since the day I got my license. I like to
I
sit
love
down
that.
and explain the whole process to them so they
Yeah.
understand it. And
Yeah.
I don't use legalese or statute numbers. I explain it very
Right.
practically. And
Right.
that has really fed into my work, honestly.
Sure.
I just got present to this a few months ago that my methodology that I created came directly from being not only an attorney, but how I do that with my clients, right?
Right.
Because it's
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
practical and it's accessible. So,
Right.
and that's what I said, there's a lot of things to consider that too. It's like, well, how much time would it take for you to show that, all that stuff?
Sure.
That's how
Sure.
you do it. But there's a way of, um, in a way, this is it's what people say. These are, don't take it personally. Yeah, you could,
Sure.
sure, we all know that, but the
It's the
path,
practice.
it's the practice of it, and
Yeah.
that's why I like my work because it's a compass. You have a place to go, and you can start from there. Right? It's all about
Yeah.
orientation. What's the experience you're
Mm.
having? What's the experience you want?
Yeah.
right? And if you want them to experience the 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 quality that you know you can
Mm,
bring, sometimes they need to experience their own idea on how it doesn't work, right?
mm,
I mean, maybe,
100%.
right?
Yeah,
So
yeah, yeah.
that's
I
yeah,
really love that. I love the frame of, you know, how do I want this to play out? Like, how do I want this, relationship to be? How do I want this project to go? Really thinking about that for a moment and then going in and saying, okay, look, maybe this will help both of us if I explained this scenario and that scenario. And here's an example of that scenario. And helping you sort of visualize this more and sleeping on it would probably better reduce the anxiety that we're both having, and so I think that's kind of shifting from, yeah, like they know something, I know something, and instead of butting up, saying like, I see that you see it this way, let me reframe it all the way around and see if that can help, right? I think, and it might,
yeah,
and actually back around and help me see their perspective and just have more practice more empathy in that moment. So
yeah.
that's something we always got to practice. That's for sure.
And it builds
I love
trust.
that.
It
Yeah.
builds
Oh
trust,
man.
and
Yeah.
and that's the things like, being empathetic, reframing, we have all these tools. We know
Mm,
to use them. But a lot of
right.
times I find, and which is why I really love my work, is that we don't know how to implement them. We don't know where to start, right?
Mm,
And the compass is very simple. What's my experience? What experience do I want? Just the
experience.
question can
Yeah.
just
Reframe it.
put,
Yeah.
reframe it. It can put you back in a place of power instead of frustration, instead of annoyance, instead of on their pathway, instead of being lost in what you want, just back to the pathway.
This is so powerful that I'm putting it on a post-it right now. What experience do I want? And that's gonna live on my computer until I like turn it into a poster or something. That's really powerful, man. Seriously. I mean,
Awesome.
it's a really simple frame, but
Yeah.
but the idea is not only practicing, but like creating some kind of, for me, I'm always like, I always need a reminder. Like,
Yeah.
look at this reminder, right? Like it just says listen right next to
Yeah.
like where I'm looking at the camera, right? And again, it's a practice because we say that, right? We whatever, but it's like you really have to remember it as often as you can. And I think for me personally, I'm the type that constantly needs that. So I really appreciate that. What experience do I want to help reframe the position I am working from, and then going down that pathway with that compass? That's really beautiful. Well said. So
And
obviously, you're a brand new author, and congratulations, your book just came out. And I think, look, writing a book, putting your expertise into something like that is exponentially hard. It's just hard in general. So congratulations to you, man. I
thank you.
know it's going to help support you and your brand and your work. So with that, a lot of our listeners are sort of in your position where they've launched their book or getting ready to launch their book. Um, what do you think something, as you wrote your book and got it out there, what's something that's helped you so far in building your new coaching business, your speaking business? I know you're very new to this, or fairly new, but what's one thing that's sort of stood out so far that's helped you in making that decision to finish your book and get it out there?
Well, so my book is it's a training, right? It's a methodology. It's a personal development context, right? So
Hmm.
I think in that sense, I want to share the methodology, right? Sharing
Hmm.
it is what really um, drove me,
Yeah.
honestly. And I
Yeah.
self-published. I
Hmm.
self-published. I had an editor which I paid for. It all came out of pocket, and
Sure.
yeah, it cost money, but I wanted to share what was in it because I believe in it,
Mm.
right? I believe in it because I saw the impact on my family. So I think
Mm.
that's what really helped me even get it published, right?
Yeah.
And my family, not everyone was on board at the beginning, because it's an
Right.
investment to write or
Sure.
publish a book. And depending how you publish it too, there's a lot of different ways to do it. But I did publish
Right.
it in print and paperback and an audiobook
Sure.
and all that. So, but yeah, if you're connected to the work, to your work, right? And you want to share it. I think, and I reframe things now in my methodology as it is now, but the automatics are the doubts, right?
Mm,
I can, no one's gonna like it. I don't know. Can I do this? And that came up as I wrote my book. That came up as I was
right.
publishing it. But I just kept connecting to the experience I wanted and the experience I was having, right? Because I kept discovering that my work is powerful. Even after it's published,
Well,
I'm like, wow, this is still powerful. It's still
yeah,
developing. It's still maturing.
yeah,
So having that connection with your work, I think is really important, and not letting the automatic interfere with it. And it will pop up. We're human. The automatics are there. It's just about identifying them and just continuing onward, right?
sure. Really
Um,
powerful. Yeah.
and one of the things that I've done with my work is that I've continued to go deeper into it.
Mm,
So, we're talking earlier about like marketing and stuff. I don't think I've made necessarily great marketing choices necessarily. Um,
sure.
but uh, one thing I've consistently done is I've consistently explore the depth of my work. And I've tried
Mm,
to translate that into, like you mentioned, my content on LinkedIn.
yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And as my content, as I do that, as I explore it, it evolves. It's evolved some. So
Yeah.
you look at my social media on Instagram or Facebook or TikTok, the posts on there over the past few months, they have a different flavor. They have a different, stance. My content now on LinkedIn, and I do still share on the other ones. I've worked on it so much, and I've processed it so much that I try to convey the most value. I try to convey my message, my methodology with the fewer words. And that to me has really been powerful. It's just been, wow, I'm really living through my work.
Yeah.
And I think about it all the time. I still practice law, so when I'm working on a case, I'm like something pops in my head about my book or about, a quote or something I want to explore later, and I have to stop and jot it down. But I'm like, no, I got to get back to work. I got to do my law work. So yeah, there's something about connecting and continuously exploring your work. And that's why I say, this personal development aspect of it, because for me, it's a methodology which I apply. Authors can have all types of different, books and connections with their work, but if you see the value in it, the message it can give, you, part of the work is staying connected with that.
Mm, it's really powerful, man. And again, I found you via your work, and I think someone I know liked your post, and I just kind of went down that rabbit hole, right? Like I read your post, like this is cool, and then I
Mm.
kind of, looked you up, looked at your website, and I was like, oh, this is good. Like I want to have this conversation with this guy, right? And language is very powerful for me. I know, like again, I know probably nothing in comparison to how deep you've studied it, which is why I'm excited to continue following you, read your book fully, and like get into that work because it is an experience. It is the human experience. It is the foundation. I love that you said that because, or I love that this is the subtitle of your book. It's the foundation of the human experience. In that, when we use our language in a way that's powerful or empowers us and powerful between other people, we can express our ideas better. We can express our thinking. We can express our freedoms, our whatever, however, whatever context you put in there, it fits the narrative really well. So thank you for taking the time and the energy to put it all together for us in the format of a book. And if you're out there and you are interested, You Begin with Language is available now. You can find it on Nathan's website, of course, which leads you to Amazon. So go there, buy the book, buy the audiobook, support my man Nathan. It's not only a good book, but honestly, go follow him on LinkedIn. He's got a lot of great stuff to share. I've been following him and kind of taking the freebies, if you will. So go there. Nathan has an amazing coaching program too. If you're out there and looking for ways to improve understanding your language, which is communication, which is, again, top down from leadership to management to everything in between, our language really matters. And I'm in the world of sort of media and graphic and all that, websites and all those things. And I always tell people the number one thing we start with is let's clearly understand and communicate what's your one liner. And I'll always tell people like marketing is just clear, good communication. And the way we do that is we have to talk this through. And so language is very, very important. So thank you for sharing that, my man. Thank you for coming on the show. If there's one thing that you hope people would do differently after finishing your book, what would that be?
Whenever something pops in your mind, just stop. Just take a breath. Just take a moment. And know that it has no value just because it popped in your mind. It could be a critique about yourself, about someone else. It could be whatever it is. You know, we let language run us. That's our human
Mm,
experience. That's what's got us to where we are now, you know, and we can interrupt it. Then we use language to empower us. So that's why automatic is the first step on the compass. It's always there. So if you can see it, if you can interrupt it, you're already doing what most people never do.
perfect. Nathan, thank you so much for being on the show. Thank you for that last insight. And if you're out there, like I said, go get that book. It's incredible. Nathan, again, man, you're awesome, brother. I feel like we need to do like round two in a couple of weeks or something. So I may hit you
Absolutely.
up for
Would love
that.
to. Yeah, let's
We'll
do
go
it.
deeper, of course. Thanks again, man, for coming on
Absolutely.
the show. If you're out there, you enjoyed the show, like, subscribe, all that good stuff, share it with a friend. Till next time, peace.